The blue-green planet called Earth was just one small dot in the vast universe, but the humans who lived there were far from ordinary. By the year 2157, humans had spread beyond their home world. They built homes on the red plains of Mars and under the icy crust of Europa. The United Earth Space Force, or UESF, kept watch over these new homes among the stars. The UESF ship called Defiance moved slowly through the dark space near Jupiter. Its metal hull gleamed under the distant sun's weak light. Commander Lisa Weber sat in her captain's chair, one leg crossed over the other in a way that would make any military trainer frown. "Status report," she said, taking a sip from her coffee mug that read "Not before coffee" in bold letters. Lieutenant Kyle Daniels looked up from his screen. His dark hair stuck out in all directions like he had just rolled out of bed, which he probably had. "All quiet, Commander, just the usual ice and rocks." Dr. Alan Pearson stood nearby, looking at readings on a tablet. His glasses sat crooked on his nose. Before becoming a scientist who studied alien life, Pearson had been a soldier who fought in tight spots where normal rules didn't work. He knew how to think fast and break rules when needed. "I'm getting some strange energy readings from Sector 7, Pearson said, pushing his glasses up. "Never seen anything like it." Commander Weber put down her coffee. "Show me." The main screen lit up with wavy lines and numbers that made no sense to most people. But Weber knew enough to be worried. "That's not natural," she said. "Daniels, take us closer, but slowly. Harper, ready the shields just in case." The Defiance changed course, moving toward the strange energy. As they got closer, something began to appear on their screens. At first, it looked like a small dot. Then it grew larger and larger until they could see its true shape. "Sweet mother of," Daniels whispered. A ship hung in space before them, but calling it a ship was like calling an ocean a puddle. The alien vessel was enormous, at least 20 times the size of the largest human ships. Its surface shone with lights that moved in, patterns too perfect to be random. The shape wasn't like human ships either. It curved and twisted in ways that seemed to ignore the normal rules of space travel. "Scan it," Weber ordered, her voice steady even though her heart raced. Pearson worked quickly. "It's definitely not from Earth or any human colony. The metal isn't anything we've seen before. Energy readings are off the charts. And there are life forms aboard, thousands of them." Weber stood up. "First contact," she said quietly. "Daniels, open all communication channels. Standard greeting protocol." Daniels nodded and began sending signals toward the giant ship. Minutes passed with no response. "Maybe they don't understand our," Daniels began, but was cut off when the screen suddenly filled with light. The light faded to show a face, or something like a face. The being had 6 eyes arranged in a circle. Its skin was pale blue and seemed to shimmer. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move, but they heard words in their heads. "Greetings, primitive vessel. You have entered space claimed by the hegemony. Identify yourselves according to Standard Protocol 769 of the Galactic Charter." Weber blinked. "This is Commander Lisa Weber of the United Earth Space Force ship Defiance. We don't know about any Galactic Charter. We're from Earth." She pointed toward the distant blue dot. "That's our home." The alien's eyes blinked in an odd pattern. "Unacceptable response. You must follow proper diplomatic format." It seemed confused, maybe even annoyed. Weber shrugged. "Sorry, but we don't know your rules. How about we start over? Hello, nice to meet you. We come in peace and all that." The alien's eyes blinked rapidly now. "This is irregular. Hegemony records show your planet has received our standard communication packages through radio waves for the last 50 Earth years." Pearson stepped forward. "Wait, those weird signals we picked up? The ones that seemed like patterns but not messages? We thought they were just space noise." The alien made a sound like water running backward. "Impossible. All developing species decode our messages and prepare for proper first contact." Weber laughed. "Well, we missed that memo. Look, why don't you tell us who you are? We'll tell you who we are, and we can figure out the rest as we go." The alien conferred with someone off-screen. The humans couldn't hear the conversation, but the alien's body language showed clear distress. Finally, It turned back to them. I am Diplomatic Envoy Trelvox of the Hegemony, a union of 27 advanced species who maintain order in this sector of the galaxy. Nice to meet you, Trelvox, Weber said with a smile. Want to dock ship so we can talk face to face? Our cook makes great coffee. Coffee? The alien seemed lost. A drink. Brown, bitter, keeps us running, Weber explained. You invite unknown aliens to connect vessels and share bitter substances? Trelvox's voice was higher now, almost squeaking. Daniels leaned toward Weber. I think we're freaking them out, Commander. Better than boring them, Weber whispered. Back. To the alien, she said. Or we could just talk like this if you prefer. The alien made rapid movements with its forearms. Your behavior is outside all expected parameters. You should be following first contact protocol with proper deference to superior technology. Pearson stepped forward. We humans tend to make things up as we go. Works pretty well for us. The alien's eyes all widened at once. This is... It turned and shouted something to others off-screen. The translation came through as, They're space goblins. Unpredictable and dangerous. Weber raised an eyebrow. Goblins? That's a new one. The screen suddenly went blank. The giant ship began to move away at incredible speed. They're running away, Daniel said in disbelief. We scared them off by being Chorin ourselves. Weber couldn't help but laugh. Well, that's one way to handle first contact. Space goblins, huh? I kinda like it. Pearson looked worried. Commander, I think we just made a very bad first impression on a very powerful group of aliens. Weber nodded, her smile fading. Send a message to Earth Command right away. They need to know we're not alone out here, and that our new neighbors think we're the weird ones. The Defiance turned around and sped toward home, carrying news that would change everything for the people of Earth. The age of thinking humans were alone in the universe was over. The age of being known as space goblins had just begun. The giant alien ship called Eternal Order floated in space far from any star. Inside its gleaming walls, beings from many worlds moved with careful steps and spoke with measured words. At the center of the ship stood a round room where the leaders of the hegemony met to make big choices. High Commander Zixval sat tall in the main chair. His 8 limbs were still as stone as he watched the video from the first meeting with humans again. His skin, covered in tiny scales the color of deep oceans, shimmered under the soft lights. Play it one more time, he said to the room. The video showed Commander Weber smiling and offering coffee to the shocked hegemony diplomat. It showed humans who didn't follow rules they should have known. It showed chaos. Enough, Zixval finally said. Diplomatic Assessor Neutron, explain this behavior. Neutron stepped forward. Unlike Zixval, she looked almost human, except for her eyes which changed color with her feelings. Right now they were deep purple with worry. High Commander, we have studied the broadcasts from Earth for many cycles. Their planet shows all signs of a Type 2 pre-contact civilization. They should have recognized our signals and prepared for proper first contact. She paused, but they did not. They acted without structure or respect. Are they dangerous? Asked another council member. Neutron's eyes shifted to red. Most certainly. Look at their history. The big screen on the wall showed scenes from Earth's past. Wars. People fighting with simple weapons, then with guns, then with bombs that could destroy whole cities. They have been fighting each other since they first picked up sticks, Neutron said. Most species spend this energy on art or science. Humans spend it finding new ways to fight. Zixval made a low humming sound, and yet they have not destroyed themselves. That is what makes them so strange, High Commander. They fight, they nearly die out, then they work together and grow stronger. It makes no sense. Her eyes turned deep blue with confusion. The door to the council room slid open and 2 humans walked in. Captain Frank Rodriguez wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's Space Force. His black hair was cut short, and his face showed no fear as he looked at the alien council. Beside him walked Specialist Olivia Matthews, a small woman with bright red hair and quick eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. The human representatives, as requested, announced the guard who brought them. Zixval turned all four of his eyes toward the humans. Captain Rodriguez, Specialist Matthews, we have called you here to explain your species' behavior. Rodriguez stepped forward and gave a small bow. Thank you for having us, High Commander. We're happy to clear up any confusion. Why did your Commander Weber not follow proper first contact protocol? Nuthran asked, her eyes now yellow with curiosity. Matthews smiled. Because we didn't know there was one. We're kind of new to this space neighborhood. But our signals, Nuthran began, were pretty but made no sense to us. Matthews cut in. Several hegemony members gasped at the interruption. We thought they were just space noise. Humans have to learn languages through repeated exposure and context. We couldn't crack your code. Rodriguez nodded. Every human group has different ways of saying hello. We figured space would be the same. We just tried to be friendly. By offering a bitter drug during first diplomatic contact? Zixval asked. Rodriguez laughed, making several council members shift in their seats. Coffee isn't a drug. Well, not a dangerous one. It's how we welcome friends on Earth. Nuthran brought up more images on the screen. Explain this human behavior. The images showed soldiers crawling through mud, children climbing trees where they might fall, people jumping out of flying machines with cloth to slow their fall. Matthews looked at the pictures and shrugged. That's just Tuesday for us. We like to push limits. It's how we learn and grow. It's chaos, said a council member with tentacles who sat near the back. It's innovation, Rodriguez countered. Humans get bored easily. We try new things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but we keep trying. Zixval stood up, towering over the humans. This is our concern. Your species does not follow predictable patterns. The hegemony has brought peace to 27 worlds through order and rules. You humans seem to break rules as easily as breathing. Matthews grinned. We call it thinking outside the box. We prefer thinking inside very safe, tested boxes, Nuthran said. The council room grew quiet. Zixval walked in a slow circle around the humans, studying them. Show them the Vexler testing, he finally said. Nuthran looked worried but pressed a button on her wrist. The screen showed a simple puzzle with colored shapes that needed to be arranged in some order. Then it showed different species solving. The bird-like Cavarians took 4 minutes, the furry Woxtel took 7. The humans in the test took 20 minutes. See? They are slow learners, said a council member. Keep watching, Zixval said. On the screen, the human test subjects became restless. Then one of them turned the puzzle on its side, finding a way to solve it that none of the other species had discovered. They finished in 25 minutes with a better solution than the test was designed for. They cheated, someone said. They innovated, Zixval corrected. This is why they are dangerous. They do not think as we do. Rodriguez crossed his arms. With all respect, High Commander, we are not dangerous unless threatened. We want peaceful contact with the hegemony. Zixval turned all 4 eyes to the captain. And yet your Commander Weber's first instinct was to invite unknown aliens to dock with your ship. No safety checks, no protocols. That's just how humans make friends, Matthews said. We take chances. Space goblins, whispered one council member, and others nodded in agreement. Zixval returned to his seat. The council will now vote on the human question. You may wait outside. As Rodriguez and Matthews were led from the room, they could hear the heated discussion begin. Outside in the waiting area, Matthews turned to Rodriguez with worry on her face. They're afraid of us, she whispered. All because we don't follow their rules. Rodriguez nodded slowly. And afraid people make bad choices. We need to prepare Earth for whatever they decide. Inside the council chamber, the vote was taken. The decision was quick, and almost all agreed. Humans were too unpredictable to be allowed free travel among the stars. A containment field would be placed around Earth's solar system until the space goblins could be properly understood, or properly controlled. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Aliens were real and they had put a wall around the whole solar system. No human ship could go past Pluto. Each time they tried, they hit something they could not see that pushed them back. In a big room deep under the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, the leaders of Earth met to talk about what to do. The room had no windows, only bright lights and big screens on the walls. Maps of space filled these screens with a red line showing where the alien wall stood. General Patricia Norton stood at the front of the room. Her gray hair was cut short, and her eyes were sharp as she looked at the men and women sitting around the long table. "So that's the situation," she said, pointing at the screens. "We're trapped in our own solar system by aliens who think we're too wild to be trusted. Space goblins," said a man in a suit. "That's what they called us. Like we're some kind of pests." Norton nodded. "Captain Rodriguez and Specialist Matthews are still on the hegemony ship trying to change their minds, but we can't wait for talking. To work, we need a plan to break through that wall." Major Richard Grant raised his hand. He was a big man with a scar on his chin and hands that looked like they had seen hard work. "Permission to speak freely, General?" "Always, Grant." Grant stood up. "The hegemony thinks we're unpredictable, that we don't follow normal rules. They see it as bad, but it's our strength." He walked to a screen and tapped it, changing the view to show the alien wall. "They built this wall thinking about normal space travel, normal weapons, normal thinking. So let's not be normal." Norton smiled a little. "What do you have in mind, Major?" "Let's be the space goblins they think we are. Hit them with things so strange they can't plan for them." A woman at the end of the table laughed. "You want us to out-weird a bunch of aliens?" "Exactly," Grant said with a grin. "They're not ready for our brand of crazy." Norton thought for a moment, then nodded. "I like it. Major Grant, I'm putting you in charge of a new team. Pick whoever you need." 3 days later, Grant sat in a smaller room with the people he had chosen. Engineer Susan Harper was a small woman with big ideas and hands that never stopped moving. She had built weapons that no one else could think of, things that broke all the rules of what weapons should be. Next to her sat a being who was not human at all. He looked like a tall man with gray skin and eyes too big for his face. His name was Corvus, a member of the hegemony who had left his people to live among humans because he found them more interesting. "The hegemony builds perfect walls," Corvus said in his sing-song voice. "Perfect for stopping things that follow the rules of normal space travel, but they never think about the strange ways." "What kind of strange ways?" asked Grant. Harper's eyes lit up. "What if we don't try to break through the wall at all? What if we go around it?" "It surrounds the whole solar system," Grant said. "In normal space, yes," Harper said. "But what about jumping into short hyperspace bursts? Not long enough to go far, just enough to skip over the wall?" Corvus made a sound like bells. "The hegemony would never think of that. Hyperspace is for long travel, not small jumps. It would be like using a spaceship to cross a street." "Exactly," Harper said. "It's wasteful, it's silly, it's not how things are done. It's perfect." Grant smiled. "That's goblin thinking right there. What else?" They worked for weeks, building strange ships and stranger weapons. Harper made a device that could send messages by writing on the very signals the hegemony used to keep the wall working. Corvus showed them how to make their ships look like space rocks to hegemony sensors. While they worked, more hegemony ships arrived outside the wall. The aliens were watching, making sure humans stayed in their solar system cage. "They're scared of us," Harper said one day as she looked at pictures of the hegemony ships. "All these mighty aliens with their perfect technology, and they're scared of humans who just figured out how to leave their own planet." Grant nodded. "Fear makes you do stupid things like putting all your faith in one big wall." The day came to test their plan. 5 small ships, each just big enough for 2 people, waited in a line at the edge of the solar system. They looked nothing like normal ships. Their shapes were all wrong, with bumps and dents that seemed to make no sense. "Remember," Grant's voice said through the radio to all ships, "we're not trying to fight our way through. We're sneaking past like goblins in the night." "Goblins in space," Harper corrected from her ship. She sat next to Corvus, who would help guide them once they were past the wall. Goblins in space, Grant agreed with a laugh. Now let's show the hegemony what humans can do. Begin jump sequence. The 5 ships moved forward slowly. When they were just about to hit the wall, Harper pushed a button on her control panel. Her ship seemed to blink out of normal space for less than a second. When it appeared again, it was on the other side of the wall. It worked, she shouted into her radio. We're through. One by one, the other ships followed. Little jumps, like skipping over a crack in the sidewalk, took them past the wall that was supposed to keep humans contained forever. On the main hegemony ship, alarms began to sound. Screens showed the small human ships appearing where they should not be able to go. Impossible, said the hegemony commander, staring at the screens. They cannot have broken through the containment field. They didn't break through it, said a sensor operator with fear in his voice. They jumped over it, with tiny hyperspace jumps. Who would even think to use hyperspace that way? Space goblins would, the commander said quietly. Back on Earth, General Norton watched her screens as the 5 ships moved away from the wall, heading deeper into space. And that's just the first wave, she said to the room. The hegemony thought they could keep humans in a box. She smiled as she watched the ships. They're about to learn that humans don't do well in boxes. The 5 human ships spread out once they passed the wall. Each had a different job in what they called Operation Space Goblin. They moved fast, knowing the hegemony would send ships to catch them. Admiral Paul Winters sat in the largest of the 5 ships. It wasn't big by hegemony standards, but it carried the most weapons. He watched the screens that showed space around them. Any sign of them following us? He asked the woman sitting at the front of the ship. Lieutenant Donna Clark shook her head. Not yet, Admiral. I think we surprised them so much they're still trying to figure out what happened. Winters smiled. Good. That gives Captain Chen time to get into position. Many miles away, the smallest of the 5 ships moved quietly through the darkness. The ship called Trickster was special. Its outside was covered in materials that made it hard to see on scanners. Captain Laura Chen guided it carefully toward a large object floating in space. There it is, she said to her co-pilot. The hegemony's communication hub. The hub looked like a giant metal flower with many petals spread wide to catch signals from all over this part of space. All hegemony ships sent messages through hubs like this. Are you sure this will work? Asked the co-pilot. Chen nodded. Harper's device just needs to touch one of those petals. Then we can send our message to every hegemony ship at once. She moved the Trickster closer, using small bursts from the engines to drift toward the hub. No one had ever tried to sneak up on a hegemony hub before. The aliens didn't guard it because no one was supposed to be able to find it without being invited. Space goblins don't wait for invitations, Chen whispered as she brought her ship alongside one of the giant petals. Back at the wall around Earth's solar system, hegemony ships were moving fast. The commander of these ships, Vorkalax, was angry. His long fingers tapped on the arm of his chair as he looked at the screens showing where the human ships had jumped over his perfect wall. Find them, he said to his crew. Search all nearby space. They cannot have gone far in such small ships. A young hegemony officer approached him. Sir, should we make the wall stronger? Higher? Vorkalax shook his head. It wouldn't matter. If they can jump over it once, they can jump over it no matter how high we make it. He stood up and walked to the big window that showed the stars. We need to catch them and learn how they did this. The hegemony must understand these humans before more of them escape. Alarms suddenly started blaring on his ship. Red lights flashed. What now? He asked, turning back to his crew. Sir, we're getting a strange signal through the communication hub. It's everywhere. Every screen, every communication channel. The main screen on Vorkalax's ship changed. Instead of showing stars and sensor readings, it showed a human face. Admiral Winters looked out at them. Greetings from Earth, Winters said. This is Admiral Paul Winters of the United Earth Space Force. We have a message for the hegemony. Vorkalax's eyes widened. How are they doing this? Cut the connection. We can't, sir, said his communication officer. They've somehow taken control of the hub. On the screen, Winters continued. You put a wall around our solar system because you fear what humans might do. You call us space goblins because we don't follow your rules. But trying to keep humans trapped will only make things worse. The screen split to show Captain Chen standing next to the hegemony communication hub. We've already figured out how to jump your wall. We figured out how to use your own communication system to talk to all of you at once, and this is just the beginning of what humans can do. Vorkalax sat down heavily in his chair. They reached a hub. No non-hegemony species has ever even found a hub, let alone touched one. On a different part of the screen, Sergeant Daniel Morris appeared. He was a strong-looking man with a friendly face that didn't match his serious words. Even now, we have teams on the ground on 3 different planets in your space, not to fight but to learn. Impossible, Vorkalax whispered. We would have detected ships landing on our planets. Check the mining moon of Proxima Centauri B, said one of his officers, looking at a report that just came in. And 2 small outposts in the Tau Ceti system. They all report unusual activities. Admiral Winters returned to the full screen. The hegemony has a choice to make. You can keep trying to fight humans, to contain us and control us. If you do, we will keep finding ways around your walls and rules. Or you can talk with us, trade with us, learn with us. The screen went dark. The message was over. Vorkalax sat in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to his second in command. Call the High Council. They need to know what happened here. Far away, the 5 human ships met up again in empty space. They had done their jobs well. The trickster had planted Harper's device on the communication hub, letting them send their message to every hegemony ship and planet at once. Morris and his ground teams had slipped onto hegemony worlds, using the same jump technology that got them past the wall, and Winters had delivered the message that would make the hegemony think twice about trying to keep humans contained. Do you think it worked? Chen asked as their ships floated together in the darkness. They know we're out here now, Winters said. They know walls won't hold us. That was phase 1. What's phase 2? Asked Morris through the radio from his ship. Winters smiled. Now we wait for them to come to us. The hegemony has 2 choices. Make us enemies or make us friends. Let's see which they choose. On the main hegemony world, the High Council met in an emergency session. The room was filled with angry voices and worried faces. These humans are out of control, said one council member. They jump our walls, they touch our hubs, they walk on our worlds without permission. They're everywhere at once, said another. How do we fight an enemy that doesn't follow any normal rules of war? High Commander Zixfall raised a hand for silence. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should stop seeing them as enemies to be contained. Perhaps it's time to think about these space goblins differently. What do you mean? Asked Nuthran. If you can't beat them, Zixfall said, maybe it's time to join them. 6 months after humans broke through the wall, a new meeting took place. This time it wasn't in a hidden room on Earth or a scary council chamber on a hegemony ship. It was on a space station built halfway between Earth's solar system and hegemony, space. The station was called Convergence, and it hung in the blackness like a shining wheel. Inside the main meeting room, both humans and hegemony members sat around a large round table. No one sat at the head because both sides had agreed that they would talk as equals. President Allison Beck of the United Earth government wore a simple blue suit. Her brown hair was pulled back and she looked calm even though this meeting would decide the future of humans in space. Beside her sat Ambassador Ryan Mitchell, a man who had grown up on the rough streets of New Detroit and had learned how to talk his way out of trouble. Those skills were needed now more than ever. On the other side of the table sat Grand Arbiter Keth Morax, the oldest and wisest of all hegemony leaders. Unlike the other members of his species, who had blue skin, his was almost white with age. His 4 eyes moved slowly as he studied the humans. This meeting of Earth and the hegemony is now open, said a neutral voice from speakers in the ceiling. Both parties have agreed to speak freely and honestly. President Beck spoke first. Thank you for agreeing to these talks. Earth wants peace, with the hegemony, not war. Keth Morax nodded his large head. Peace is always the hegemony's goal as well. But peace requires order. and humans have shown little respect for order. Mitchell leaned forward. With respect, Grand Arbiter, humans have our own kind of order. It just looks different from yours. You jump over walls, said a younger hegemony member with clear disapproval in his voice. You touch communication hubs. You land on planets without permission. We do, Mitchell agreed with a small smile. We also built cities on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We cured diseases that should have wiped us out. We made art and music while fighting wars. Humans are good at doing things that seem impossible. Keth Morax tapped a long finger on the table. This is what troubles the hegemony. You do not fit in our understanding of how species should develop. You are too unexpected. Beck nodded. We've heard we're being called space goblins throughout hegemony space. A term of fear, Keth Morax admitted. But perhaps not entirely wrong. In our oldest stories, goblins were creatures who found paths where there should be none. Who built things that should not work yet did. Who surprised even the gods. A new voice spoke up. It belonged to a being from a hegemony world called Pax. She looked a bit like a tall human with skin that changed colors with her mood. Right now, it was a thoughtful green. My name is Trelvi, she said. I am Director of Innovation for Pax. For 10 cycles, my world has faced a problem with our atmosphere generators. They are failing, and we cannot fix them because they were built by the old ones before us. What does this have to do with humans? Asked another hegemony member. I have studied the reports of human problem-solving, Trelvi said. Her skin shifted to an excited yellow. They do not think as we do. When faced with a problem, they try things that make no sense, and sometimes those things work. You want to use humans to fix your generators? Beck asked. I want to learn from humans, Trelvi corrected. I want to understand this goblin thinking. Others around the table started to speak up. A bird-like being talked about human music that broke all the rules of proper harmony, yet somehow sounded beautiful. Another mentioned human cooking that mixed flavors no sensible chef would combine. Keth Morax raised a hand for quiet. I have lived for 300 cycles. I have seen 17 new species join the hegemony. All followed the same path of development, the same rules of logic and growth. He turned all four eyes to look directly at President Beck. Until humans. You break every pattern we know. Beck smiled. That's kind of our specialty. Yes, the old alien agreed. And now I must ask, will you use this specialty to tear down the hegemony or to help it grow in new ways? Mitchell jumped in. Earth has no interest in tearing anything down. We want to explore, to learn, to trade. But we won't be caged or controlled. The room grew quiet. Keth Morax closed his four eyes, thinking deeply. When he opened them again, he had made his choice. I propose a new arrangement, he said. The wall around Earth's solar system will be removed. Humans will be allowed to travel, trade, and settle in hegemony space with the same rights as all member species. A murmur of surprise ran around the table. This was more than the humans had hoped for. In exchange, Keth Morax continued, humans will share their unique thinking with us. You will be advisors, problem solvers, teachers of creative chaos. Chaos consultants, Mitchell said with a grin. I like it. You would value our unpredictability that much? Beck asked. Keth Morax nodded. The hegemony has brought peace and order to many worlds. But order without growth leads to stagnation. You humans with your goblin ways may be exactly what we need. They talked for many more hours working out the details of the agreement. By the end, both sides had signed the Treaty of Convergence. Humans would join the galactic community not as junior members but as special advisors. 3 weeks later, the wall around Earth's solar system came down. Human ships began to spread into the stars, but not as invaders or rebels. They went as teachers, explorers, and problem solvers. On a small hegemony planet called Lux, engineer Susan Harper stood with a group of young aliens. They were looking at a broken machine that controlled the planet's water systems. The repair manual says it cannot be fixed, said one of the aliens. We must build a new one, which will take 6 months. Harper smiled as she pulled tools from her bag. Let me show you how space goblins fix things. She turned the machine on its side, which made the aliens gasp. That is not in the manual, one said. Exactly, Harper replied with a wink. Now watch and learn. Across the galaxy, humans were teaching aliens to think differently, and the aliens were teaching humans the value of some rules and order. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes there were arguments and misunderstandings. But both sides were learning. The term space goblin changed from an insult to a job title. Need someone to solve an impossible problem? Call a space goblin. Need a new way to look at an old situation? Earth's consultants were just a call away, and in the great council chamber of the hegemony, a new symbol was added to the wall beside the emblems of all member worlds. A small blue-green planet with the words, Earth, home of the space goblins, written beneath it in shining letters.